Today is Tuesday, January 20th, 2026. The time is 7:01 p.m. Eastern. Welcome to Geopolitical Updates from AGI Era. The international order is experiencing unprecedented turbulence, with U.S. President Donald Trump at the epicenter. His recent assertive demands regarding the acquisition of Greenland have sent ripples through global diplomacy, drawing sharp rebukes from European leaders and prompting a significant re-evaluation of transatlantic relations. Lise Doucet of the BBC notes that President Trump is shaking the world order more than any president since World War II, characterizing his Greenland demands as a rude awakening in a moment fraught with risk. This bold push has not only strained diplomatic ties, but also triggered immediate economic repercussions, with Europe now moving to suspend approval of a major U.S. trade deal. The proposed acquisition, which President Trump describes as another in a very long line of national security reasons why Greenland has to be acquired, highlights a profound shift in global power dynamics and strategic priorities. The EU's retaliatory move to halt trade deal approval signals a growing willingness among European nations to challenge U.S. unilateralism, especially when core national and regional interests are perceived to be under threat. This escalating tension underscores a geopolitical landscape where long-standing alliances are being tested and new alignments could emerge. Moving to other critical global developments, a tragic train derailment near Barcelona, Spain, has resulted in one driver killed and at least 37 people injured, 4 seriously. Local media report the commuter train crashed between Gelida and Sant Sadurní. Investigators are still working to determine the cause of the incident. Meanwhile, in Syria, a new 4-day ceasefire has been announced. This comes after Kurdish-led forces, specifically the SDF, announced they were compelled to withdraw their fighters from the al-Hol camp, which houses families of Islamic State fighters. The agreement aims to bring an autonomous region in the northeast under state control, a significant development in the ongoing conflict. Shifting to Eastern Europe, Ukraine's parliament and half of Kyiv are currently without heating following recent Russian strikes. President Zelensky states that Russia has begun using far more ballistic missiles in its attacks on Ukraine, indicating an escalation in the intensity and nature of the conflict. This puts immense pressure on Ukraine's infrastructure and civilian population as winter conditions persist. In Latin America, Colombia has sentenced former paramilitary leader Salvatore Mancuso to 40 years in jail. His group was found responsible for over 100 crimes, many targeting indigenous communities, a landmark ruling for justice in the region. Back to the ongoing diplomatic fallout from the Greenland issue. The UK has publicly defended its recent Chagos Islands deal, despite President Trump labeling it an act of great stupidity. This exchange further illustrates the current strain in relations between the US and its traditional allies, as Washington pursues its own strategic objectives with a directness that sometimes clashes with established diplomatic norms. The Chagos deal, involving the handover of the archipelago to Mauritius, has been a long-standing point of contention, and the U.S. criticism underscores a broader pattern of challenging previous international agreements and arrangements. And the global financial markets are reacting to the escalating tensions. Europe's decision to suspend approval of the U.S. trade deal has been met with global market falls, reflecting investor anxiety over trade uncertainties and geopolitical instability. The economic ramifications of these diplomatic spats could be substantial, affecting global supply chains and trade flows. This interconnectedness means that political decisions in one sphere quickly reverberate through another, impacting economies worldwide. Our deep analysis today focuses on the escalating diplomatic and economic fallout from U.S. President Donald Trump's determined push to acquire Greenland. This isn't just a transactional request. It's a move Lise Doucet describes as shaking the world order more than any president since World War II. The boldness of this demand, particularly at a moment already fraught with risk, underscores a fundamental shift in U.S. foreign policy, prioritizing perceived national security interests with an almost unilateral approach. The initial response from Denmark, which administers Greenland, has been one of outright rejection. However, the consistent pressure from President Trump suggests this isn't a fleeting notion. He explicitly states it's another in a very long line of national security reasons why Greenland has to be acquired, indicating a comprehensive strategic calculus behind the move. This perception of Greenland as a vital strategic asset, potentially linked to resource control, Arctic influence, or missile defense, is now dictating a significant portion of U.S. foreign policy. The immediate and tangible consequence of this aggressive posture has been Europe's decision to suspend approval of a crucial U.S. trade deal. This move, as reported by the BBC, directly follows renewed tensions between the U.S. and EU as Donald Trump pushes to acquire Greenland. This isn't merely a symbolic gesture, it's a high-impact economic countermeasure, signaling that Europe is no longer willing to accommodate U.S. demands without pushback. The suspension of a trade deal likely involving billions of dollars in economic activity demonstrates the EU's resolve to protect its economic and political autonomy. It's a clear indication that for Europe, the perceived erosion of established norms and the assertion of U.S. geopolitical dominance come at a cost to bilateral relations. Further exacerbating transatlantic relations, the UK's defense of its Chagos Islands deal was met with President Trump's derision, calling it an act of great stupidity. This public rebuke of a close ally on a sensitive territorial matter highlights a transactional approach to diplomacy. The implication is clear. Even historical alliances are not immune to direct criticism or leverage when they don't align perfectly with perceived U.S. interests. This challenges the very foundation of post-World War II cooperation and mutual respect among democratic nations. Perhaps most revealing is Russia's reaction to these developments. As reported by Steve Rosenberg, the BBC's Russia editor, pro-Russian government papers are full of praise for Donald Trump's desire to buy Greenland, gloating that Europe is at a total loss. This reaction is significant. It suggests that Moscow perceives this internal Western discord as an opportunity to sow further division and weaken the EU and NATO alliances. The sight of Western powers at odds over such fundamental issues serves Russian strategic interests by diverting attention and resources from shared challenges, such as the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. The so what for global power dynamics is profound. First, we're witnessing a fracturing of traditional Western alliances. The EU's decision to halt trade talks signals a hardening of European resolve to act in its own perceived best interests, even if it means confronting Washington directly. This could lead to a more independent European foreign policy, potentially seeking closer ties with other global powers. Second, Russia is clearly benefiting from this disunity, using it to advance its own geopolitical agenda and undermine the collective strength of the West. The public praise for President Trump in Russian media is a strong indicator of this strategic calculus. Third, the pursuit of Greenland by the U.S., irrespective of the outcome, signals a renewed emphasis on Arctic geopolitics and resource control. This could ignite a new scramble for influence in the region, potentially involving other Arctic nations like Canada, Norway, and Russia itself. Finally, the style of diplomacy employed by the U.S., characterized by direct demands and public criticism of allies, is undeniably unsettling the established international order. This approach forces other nations to adapt, either by capitulating, resisting, or seeking new partnerships. It creates an environment of unpredictability and heightened risk, where long-term strategic planning becomes incredibly challenging. The Greenland saga is not just about a piece of territory. It's about the very future of global cooperation and the stability of the international system in the AGI era. In summary, the geopolitical landscape is being reshaped by assertive U.S. foreign policy, particularly President Trump's push for Greenland, which has triggered a significant EU trade deal suspension and a clear diplomatic rift with the UK. Meanwhile, Russia observes and capitalizes on Western disunity while conflicts persist in Syria and Ukraine. These events collectively highlight a period of profound uncertainty and realignment in global power dynamics. For your watch list for the next 24 hours, 1. Observe the reactions from other Arctic nations, particularly Canada and Norway, to the escalating rhetoric surrounding Greenland. Any statements or diplomatic overtures could signal emerging alliances or counter-strategies in the region. And 2. Monitor the global financial markets for continued volatility following Europe's suspension of the U.S. trade deal. Further market reactions will be a key indicator of investor confidence and the perceived stability of international trade relations.